What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's transfer tips for Game Week 20. So I'm going to go through some of the popular players being moved in and out of people's squads and discuss whether they are good moves or not, plus some alternatives that you could look at as well. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Let's get into it. So let's start with Cunha. Now, I had already recorded this section of the video, but as I went to render it, I saw that the FA have now confirmed they're suspending Cunha for 2 matches. So I thought I'd come back and re-record the first part of this video. Now, one of those games, suspension, will be served in the FA Cup. So from an FPL point of view, he's only missing Forest at home in Game Week 20. He'll be available again from Game Week 21 onwards. Now, the fixtures are not great. They've got Newcastle away in 21, followed by Chelsea away, Arsenal at home, Villa at home, and Liverpool away. I think even though he's only out for 1 match, you can still make a case to get rid of him. We also need to wait for an update about a possible injury because he went off at half-time against Spurs. The manager afterwards said that he felt something, didn't say exactly what the injury was, but there was ice on the back of his leg. So maybe a hamstring issue, maybe a knee problem, we don't know. But it's possible that Cunha will be fit and available from Game Week 21 onwards. So if you weren't keen on selling him and you don't mind missing the Forest game because you've got another attacker you can play instead, you could look to keep him in your squad. He has been good value. But personally, as much as he was a really good pick, I think he has overperformed quite a lot. The good fixtures have gone, and you are coming back to a pretty bad fixture, and that I would probably still look to get rid of him anyway. And at this point, I'm going to cut back into when I start talking about replacements rather than re-recording that whole bit. If you're looking at forwards at his price or below, the 3 that I think most people will look at going for is Wood. Right, he will definitely be the most popular this week. Raul Jimenez potentially as well. Scored a goal against Bournemouth in Game Week 19. Got 9 points because he picked up bonus as well. And then João Pedro, who has been very underwhelming as a pick recently, but has played 490 minutes in a row and picked up 2 assists in last night's games. Although was maybe a little bit fortunate for the first assist. I'm not sure he really knew too much about that. Chris Wood is probably the most obvious player to go for. Continues to start. Minutes are pretty good. We know he's on penalties. The fixtures are also pretty decent. Obviously, this week he's playing against Cunha away from home, so it's Wolves away. Then Liverpool at home in 21 is not ideal. That's going to be a tough enough fixture. But after that, Southampton at home in 22 looks good. Then Bournemouth away, Brighton at home, Fulham away. I wouldn't say it's a perfect fixture run, but at Chris Wood's price of 6.7 million or below, there's not really any more standout options unless you really need the cash by going to someone sub 6 million. So unless you're going from Cunha to Isak or something like that, I think Cunha to Chris Wood looks pretty obvious. With Raul Jimenez, I've just sold him because he had become a bit of a headache in terms of whether he would or would not start with Muniz around. I don't think I regret making the move, but I think the fact that he started that game against Bournemouth after starting the Chelsea game as well is really positive for his minutes going forward. He is still clearly first choice above Muniz, right? The gap between Chelsea and Bournemouth in 18 and 19 was not that big. Muniz could have easily played if Marco Silva trusted him. The only issue I would have with Jimenez, and this is why he's still somewhat of a headache, is that Ipswich game. It looks obvious that Jimenez is going to start. There's 7 days between that and the last game he played. But last time Jimenez started a match against Liverpool, back in, when was it? Game Week 16. There was an 8-day gap to that Southampton game, and Muniz started it. Now, maybe that happened because the Chelsea game was only a few days later, but there are still slight doubts in my mind over whether Jimenez will start this Ipswich game. It may be that Muniz starts instead. But if he does get regular minutes, the fixtures are really good for Fulham. Ipswich at home, West Ham away, Leicester away, Man United at home, then Newcastle away, Forest at home. If he starts the next 3, there is good points there, but there has to be some doubt on that because of what we've seen over the last few game weeks. But that might have just been because it was the Christmas period, etc. And then João Pedro, it's not a great week to bring him in. Arsenal at home, not ideal whatsoever. But I still think the fixture run longer term is pretty good. Ipswich away, Man United away, Everton at home, Forest away, Chelsea at home. It's far from perfect, by the way, right? I'm not pretending it's amazing. Arsenal is not great. Chelsea at home in 25. Forest away in 24. They're not easy games, but you've got a player that's pretty much nailed on. The minutes are great right now because of the other injuries that Brighton have got, and we know he's on penalties and he's sub 6 million. So if you're looking for someone really cheap, I think João Pedro in terms of minutes is probably a bit safer than Raul Jimenez, but in terms of fixtures, Fulham definitely win. Let's move on to Trent Alexander-Arnold next, a 15-pointer in game week 19 against West Ham. A little bit fortunate with the goal because it did take a big deflection, but it hasn't stopped people bringing him in this week, and he has gone up to 7.2 million. So he's currently 0.7 million more than Van Dijk. Now, personally, I still think it's worth paying the extra if you can afford it. It might be that if you want to delay getting a Liverpool defender in until closer to their potential double in 24 or 25, that the price gap between Van Dijk and Trent might be bigger, and at that point it might be worth going for Van Dijk instead. But I think it's pretty clear who the most attacking defender is in that Liverpool team, and I've been trying to say that for weeks, and he hasn't been getting the returns. But I think now he sits at 17 games played, 1 goal, 4 assists, so 5 attacking returns in 17 matches, plus 7 clean sheets. He is well worth the money, in my opinion, and because of that Saka injury, people have got more money to spread around their team. So you can have Salah, Palmer, Isak and Trent fairly easily, I would say, for most people, unless your team value is really low. So I don't really have anything more to say. I think Trent is one of, if not the best defender to own in FPL right now. Is he essential? Absolutely not. But you can pretty much make a case to bring him in any game week from now until that double, which will almost certainly be in game weeks 24 or 25. There's no match they've got coming up where I would say it's a bad idea to bring Trent in. Man United at home this week, then Forest away, Brentford away, Ipswich at home, Bournemouth away. Whichever is your entry point, it is worth it. It doesn't have to be this week. You might have other stuff to deal with in your team, but at some point, you want to have a plan to get him, I would say. So for Nicholas Jackson owners, the only positive thing to come out of last night's match against Ipswich is that he didn't pick up his 5th yellow card, and the threshold has now increased to 10 for every team apart from Brentford and Arsenal, because they've still got to play their match in game week 19, and then Liverpool and Everton, who need to get through game week 20, and the reason for that is their postponed match a few weeks ago. But for Jackson, he was benched again against Ipswich, same as against Southampton not too long ago. There was always a possibility of that happening, but I felt if you own Jackson, it was worth putting him in your 11 and not selling him, because there was more chance that he would play this game because it was a more difficult fixture than against Southampton. So I got it wrong, he was benched, but I did get it right that it would be a more difficult game, and ultimately Chelsea lost 2-0. Now maybe they were a bit unlucky, they did have a few good chances themselves, but ultimately they have lost that match. And if you're a Jackson owner in FPL, there's massive frustration there, and that's why he started to be sold. Now, personally, I think unless you're moving to Isak, or unless you need to downgrade Jackson to get funds for another move elsewhere, he's probably worth holding on to for the next couple of games. I think Palace away and Bournemouth at home are decent enough. I'm pretty sure he's going to start both of those games, and his underlying numbers are still good. And long term, I think overall Chelsea's fixtures are quite nice. They're not perfect. They don't have like Southampton at home, Leicester away, etc., but they're pretty decent overall. My one concern would be, will Jackson definitely start that game in game week 22 against Wolves at home? I think most people would say he will, but I think there has to be some doubt because of what we've just seen against Ipswich, right? Maresca is clearly happy to rotate. Maybe less so now because they've just lost that Ipswich game, but the problem is you can't 100% guarantee he will start, and that's a problem. You can be like 95, 96, 97% sure, but I think it's nice to have that guarantee every single match. And if we look at the Chelsea fixtures, this is why I'd be slightly concerned. He's definitely starting Palace because he's just been rested. Then a week later, they've got an FA Cup third round game against Morecambe at home. So Maresca will definitely rotate in that match. Jackson, Palmer, Colwell, all of them are going to probably get the day off. And then 3 days later, you've got a home game in the Premier League against Bournemouth. That's when they come back in. So no concerns there. After that Bournemouth game, there's a match against Wolves 6 days later. And then after that Wolves game, there's a match 5 days later against Man City. Now, for most players, that is more than enough gap between matches, right? 6 days and then 5 days. You would usually expect Jackson to start. And if you ask me ahead of game week 22, do I think Jackson will start? I will probably say yes. But I'll also say I can't guarantee it because of what we've seen from Maresca. Like earlier on in the season, it was easy. He just rotates players in the European matches. It's easy against Morecambe. You rotate players for that. But he hasn't got a cup game or a European game between Bournemouth, Wolves and Man City. So can we guarantee that Jackson will start all of those? It's worth saying the gap between game week 18 when they played, let me just double check who it was, Fulham at home, to the Ipswich game was only 4 days. So maybe 6 days is better. There's just not that guarantee. So for me, I think you keep Jackson for Palace and Bournemouth unless you're desperate to get rid of him, and then you reassess ahead of that Wolves game where there is definitely enough gap to play, but we just don't know whether Maresca will definitely do it. I think the fact they've lost to Ipswich will probably mean that Maresca rotates a little bit less, but it's not still a guarantee. So he's fine for the next two. Wolves at home, maybe a slight concern. But like I said, unless you're moving to ease out or you really need funds, I think he's worth keeping hold of. He'll still get chances over the next couple of games. Would I buy him right now? Probably not. Because the other issue with him as well, just to quickly touch on this, is that yes, he probably will start the majority of games, but he's also getting subbed early in some of them. Like 3 of the last 4 he started, game weeks 15 to 18, he's been subbed off 75 minutes or earlier. So personally, I just don't think he's a buy right now. But if I had him, I'd probably be looking to hold on to him for another 1 or 2 fixtures. Let's look at another forward similar price to N.Jackson, and that is Dominic Solanke at 7.5 million, who despite low ownership actually has quite a few sales this week. Nearly 50,000 FPL managers have got rid of him before Newcastle at home in game week 20. And I completely get it, right? You look at the last couple of game weeks, he's blanked against Wolves, blanked against Forest as well. I also don't think Spurs look particularly great in either of those matches, so that's probably playing on people's minds as well. And he does have 11 attacking returns in 16 starts, which is pretty good, but it also doesn't ever feel like enough. One, because he's only had bonus points in 1 game week so far this season, but also only 6 of those 11 returns were goals. That doesn't feel great for a number 9 at Spurs. So I get why people are selling him. It's worth saying, just to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit here, he did have 4 attacking returns in the previous 3 games before Forest and Wolves, which was a goal and assist against Liverpool, an assist against Southampton, and a goal against Chelsea. So it's not like he's not returning at all. But like I said, it just never feels like he's doing enough, despite 7.5 million not being a bad price. And when I look at the next 3 game weeks, Newcastle at home I think is okay. It's not a brilliant fixture, but I don't think it's terrible either, although they are playing pretty well at the moment. Arsenal away is really tough, and then Everton away is not great for an attacker either. So I think if you want to sell him, that makes a lot of sense, especially if you're going to ease that, right? There's no argument from me whatsoever. If I can just play devil's advocate again for a quick second, I think in game week 20 specifically, there are not many players at Solanke's price or below that are massively stand out better, right? You could say because of his price and the fact he's definitely on penalties, etc., that Chris Wood long-term is a better pick than Solanke, and I wouldn't argue with you. But Wolves away for Nottingham Forest in game week 20 versus Newcastle at home for Solanke, I don't think there's too much in it. So if you have something else to do with your transfers, or you want to roll and have a bit more flexibility in game week 21, I think it's okay to hold Solanke for 1 more week. But I get that when you see that Arsenal away game and what he's returned so far, there's not really a great case to be made to keep hold of him. I just look at the fixtures for this week, and I think about other cheap forwards like Evan Nielsen against Everton at home, who I didn't mention earlier. He could be an option, but is he much better than Solanke this week? I don't think so. Watkins is more expensive, so it's not like you're looking there instead. Raul Jimenez may or may not start against Ipswich. I think Solanke's okay to hold on to. And also, and maybe this is just very big optimism from someone that owns him, and I'm just really hoping or trying to cope with having him in my team for another week. Son has just missed a penalty. Maybe there's a very small chance, like probably less than 5%, that Solanke will be on penalties from this point forward. It might be ages until we find out, but that's a slight hope there. And if you do get through the Newcastle game and you can bench him for Arsenal, after that Everton game, it's Leicester at home, Brentford away, Man United at home, which doesn't look that bad. So I've still got hope personally that long-term would be a good option, but he is very underwhelming. And I think if you want to sell him, that's absolutely something you should do. So no defender has had more transfers out than Mazraoui at Man United this week, and it's no surprise given the results that have happened recently. And last night's performance in particular, especially the first half against Newcastle, was absolutely terrible. Newcastle attack just tore through the Man United defence. So it's hard to see clean sheets over the next 6 game weeks. I think game week 21 against Southampton at home would be reasonable to play him in, but Liverpool away this week, no chance of a clean sheet. There's more chance of me winning FPL this season than there is Liverpool not scoring against Man United at home. And then Brighton at home in 22, followed by Fulham away, Palace at home, Spurs away. They've all got attackers that will cause Man United problems. So I think getting rid of him is absolutely fair. I look at recent matches, and I don't think in some ways Man United have defended terrible in general. They haven't conceded a huge amount of expected goals against Wolves, Bournemouth or City. The problem is they've got a mistake in them. Like against Wolves, you cannot concede from a corner, right? Bournemouth, you're giving the ball away, giving them chances. And Bournemouth are a good attacking team. I'm not taking anything away from them. But that's the problem with Man United right now. Even if they limit the amount of chances, they're making mistakes. And you just don't necessarily see that changing. Also, 3 losses in the last 3. It's just added pressure. So it's massive problems. You want to get rid of a Man United defender. I would not argue against that. In terms of cheap defenders to bring in, if you've got a little bit more money to spend, because Mazraoui is only 4.5 now, I think Munoz, Lewis Hall and Milenkovic at Nottingham Forest, all of them are 4.7 million. They're all worth looking at. I really like Munoz at the moment. It's not great to bring him in before Chelsea at home, but because he's playing as an attacking wing-back with genuine goal threat, should have scored in game week 19, I think he is someone that you can just put in and play every week. If you've got someone else you can play instead in some of those tougher fixtures, then great. Like I'm going to play a Fulham defender against Ipswich instead of Munoz against Chelsea. If you don't, I think it's still fine just to play him permanently. Like that's what we would have done years ago. You play your attacking wing back, even if they concede, he can go and get you a goal. I think Lewis Hall looks really good right now. Not necessarily, again, like Munoz, the best week to bring him in because Spurs away is tough to get a clean sheet. But then Wolves at home, Bournemouth at home, Southampton away and Fulham at home all look pretty good. He's, I wouldn't say really attacking, but he's quite attacking as well. Got an assist last night for Isak's goal. Was getting forward a lot. Worth keeping an eye on the Trippier situation. He went off with an injury. If Livramento is nailed, he's a bit cheaper than Lewis Hall. But I'm not quite sure how bad Trippier's injury was. It looked like he signalled with a hamstring problem, went off, came back on, and then they subbed him like a minute or so later. So Lewis Hall is probably the one to go for still. Milenkovic plays for Nottingham Forest, who are doing ridiculously well in the league. Their underlying numbers were brilliant last year from a defensive point of view and this year as well. Wolves away, not a bad fixture. Liverpool at home is tough for anyone. Then Southampton away, Southampton at home, Bournemouth away, Brighton at home. I quite like him as well. Personally, I think apart from the fact they've got a better fixture this week, I'd still probably go Munoz, maybe Lewis Hall over Milenkovic. But compared to a lot of the 4.5 million defenders and below, I would definitely go for Forest over pretty much all of them. I think Aina is good at 5.1, but I'd rather say 0.4 million. Nico Williams is only 4.3 and has been starting recently, but I just worry that at some point Moreno might come back in. So it's Milenkovic or Aina for me. I just wouldn't spend the 5.1 when I can get a defender for 4.7. If you need to go 4.5 million or below, then Castagna at Fulham has got Ipswich at home this week, followed by West Ham away, Leicester away, and then Man United at home, which is not bad at all. And also, Fulham are playing with 3 centre-backs at the moment, so Castagna is getting further forward than maybe you'd expect in the back four. So I think he looks really nice at 4.2 million. I feel like I made a little bit of a mistake not going for him over Anderson, but either of them are really good value at 4.2. I don't think many people are going to be that interested in a Villa defender right now, but they do have Leicester at home this week, then Everton away in 21 and West Ham at home in 23. So the fixtures are okay. You could look at Konza at 4.4. And then just to fill out the graphic, I put Colwill on there because Chelsea fixtures are not that bad. The problem is they just always find a way to concede. And unlike Munoz or Hall or Milenkovic or Castagna, there's just not really a huge amount of attacking threat there. Like Colwill could go and get you a goal or an assist from a set piece, like head the ball on for an assist, score, etc. But I just don't think I could buy him over any of these other players on the list. Like with Konza, he's a bit cheaper, and the other 4 are just all more attacking. So if I was going for one this week, it'd still probably be Munoz, but I think any of Hall, Milenkovic, and Castagna are all worth looking at for attacking potential, and for a lot of them for defensive returns as well. So I'm going to leave that one there. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, make sure to give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And of course, rate 5 stars if you're listening on podcast. I'll be back tomorrow for the Game Week 20 preview. I'll ask for your questions on Twitter and Blue Sky, so make sure you're following me over there. Otherwise, I'll catch you again soon.